0.84 millimeters. No one had dared to build an e-ink tablet where the ink felt so close. In addition, it's the most advanced panel in the industry, crushing other alternatives like Kindle when it comes to contrast between black and white. It's a company from Norway called reMarkable. They recently introduced their new 10.3-inch tablet, which is more affordable and could be said to replace the award-winning one. reMarkable too, but to my surprise, over the past few weeks I've been using it, there are some aspects that are actually better than their more expensive tablet, the reMarkable Paper Pro. In fact, later on you'll see them compared and you'll be amazed by the advantages of the more affordable tablet, which is the one I'm reviewing today. Not just the black on white, which looks better, but also the speed. But you'll see that comparison later on. Do you like electronic ink as a productivity tool? Forgetting about the internet, Android apps, and other distractions, and letting it help you focus on your tasks? Well, pay attention to this exclusive marvel, which for now has very few reviews on YouTube, and honestly, I don't understand why. Because with this Carta 1300 panel that almost jumps out of the glass, it really looks spectacular. I'll tell you right now that it's probably the most productive monochrome e-ink tablet, and the one with the best feel for writing, highlighting, and taking notes that I've tried so far this year. And now, here it is, the reMarkable Paper Pure, or in other words, the reMarkable 3. Here you'd have papers, warranties, etc. The USB, which I love, is the same USB that the more expensive tablet has. It's a flat USB with metal ends. It looks really professional. And look, this Norwegian company pays attention to every detail because even the tips, look at this case, how well made it is. In fact, even the sliding feels great. There are 6 extra tips. The truth is, they really take care of every detail. And here is the top pin. It's the one I would recommend. I've tried pins from every brand imaginable, and so far, this is still the one I like the most because of its feel, weight, and size. The eraser also feels like a real eraser. Anyway, I think if I had to give a really positive point, or the most positive point, to this tablet and to this brand in general, to reMarkable, it would be when it comes to writing, taking notes, highlighting, as I mentioned, and this is largely thanks to this pencil. But let's move on to the tablet. It's a more affordable 10-inch model, and keep in mind, you'll see later that in many ways, it actually outperforms the more expensive one. reMarkable Paper Pure. Something I really love is the back. Although it's a bit bittersweet, it's made of plastic, that's true, but it has a really nice texture, which makes it easier to grip. But the downside of this back part, and it's probably one of this tablet's biggest drawbacks, is that fingerprints are very noticeable. I like the bezels. They're rounded. I also like the rubber feet. On the front, 3 sides are symmetrical, but one side has a slightly wider bezel so you can hold it without any problem. And now let's talk about the ports. Honestly, there's not much to say here. USB Type-C. Also, notice the grooves. This is copied from other models, including the top-of-the-line color model from the reMarkable brand. On the other side, there's this area, which is for attaching magnetically, and it also charges magnetically. Once again, the pen is excellent, and the grip is probably the best. I said this about the Paper Pro, and it's still true with the Paper Pure. And on the other side, there's the lock and unlock button, all made of plastic. By the way, I guess this makes it lighter. The button travels good. And on the other side, there's absolutely nothing. And keep in mind, it weighs 360 grams. This is quite a bit less than the previous generation, which weighed over 400 grams. So that's appreciated. However, it is a bit thicker. That's probably to fit a bigger battery, 6 millimeters compared to the previous generation's 4.7 millimeters. Well, and something I love about this brand is that they keep updating it for many, many years. For example, you can see that finally there are several languages available, including Spanish. Honestly, people had been asking for it a lot. Even the reMarkable 2, despite being released many years ago, still receives updates. Look at the case. I really love this design. It's not a cover, but more like a folder. It's very well padded. It feels high quality. And it also includes auto sleep and auto wake when you put it in, or take it out of this folder case. Pretty innovative, honestly. I've never seen it on any other tablet, whether e-ink or regular. And here you can see the reMarkable Paper Pure in all its glory. As you can see, it doesn't have any lighting. To get the panel so close to the glass, you need to remove the lighting because you know the LED goes between the glass. They've made several updates, which I appreciate and will cover later. But for now, I'll focus on the panel. It's the most innovative panel from this brand when it comes to monochrome, meaning black, white, and grayscale. And you can already see how well it handles reflections here compared to a conventional smartphone. The glass on conventional tablets or smartphones reflects much more than this screen. As I told you, only 0.84 millimeters between the ink, meaning the panel, and your fingertip. Recently, I reviewed this Pygmy B6. It's one of the cheapest without including the same technology, Carta 1300. But you can already see right between the frame and the screen that there's like a gap. You can see there's a lot more space there. There's much more depth between the glass and the panel. This is to house the LEDs. Since it doesn't have LEDs, as you can see in these macro shots, there's barely a minimal step between the ink panel and the glass. This means you can practically touch the ink with your finger, and of course it's going to look much better, sharper. The reflections are also better controlled. You already know I'm the YouTube channel that analyzes electronic ink devices, color or monochrome, more than anyone else. And I've never seen such an incredible contrast as on this reMarkable tablet. Obviously, it has its downsides, like the fact that it doesn't have a light. But well, I guess that's the price you pay for having this great contrast between black and white. And one of the updates they've added is a lot more notebooks and ways to take notes, like quick notes. You can see, for example, in the notebooks, you have a lot more templates. Plus, you can import templates. Also, you can see that when you swipe, it's much faster now. You'll see it later compared to the more expensive tablet. But now I'm going to focus on writing. And the thing is, if you buy this reMarkable Paper Pure, or any reMarkable, I think it's undoubtedly for the writing experience it gives you. And not just that, but also its versatility. And it really feels like you're writing on paper. Also, there are many writing possibilities. It offers more than just a pen, pencil, or highlighter. Also, 5 colors, which obviously appear in black and white, but you'll see later that they do stay in color when you export them. In other options, by the way, like the highlighter, there are more colors. At this point, it's exactly the same as all its siblings, including the most expensive one. You can even choose the layers. But I think the one I like the most, because it perfectly imitates a real pencil, is the pencil option. Check this out, and above all, listen closely. Because thanks to its matte glass, and this is something it does better than all the competition, it really feels like you're writing on paper. And with the new updates, they've also added shapes. Notice that, for example, when you underline, it looks a bit odd at first. But when you hold it after drawing the line, it gets perfected. Then it takes a moment to refresh the screen, which is that flicker. And this allows you, for example, to grab a line and place it wherever you want, wherever you wish. You can see here how the shadow looks. That's why the screen needs to refresh. This happens on all e-ink screens. You can also make shapes like triangles, squares, or circles, and it does it quite well. Even when it comes to underlining, you can do it, and even if you make a mistake, it's fine, because it adapts to the text. Therefore, I think students especially are going to like this aspect. Even so, out of all the gestures it has, the one I like the most, or the one I've gotten most used to, and the fastest too, is that if you touch the screen with 2 fingers, you undo, and if you touch it with 3 fingers, you redo. It's not the fastest, but still this gesture is surprisingly faster than the most powerful and most expensive tablet from reMarkable. I keep saying once you get used to this, 2 fingers to undo and 3 fingers to redo, it feels like a perfect tool for taking notes, highlighting, studying, and so on. Even so, in the settings, as you can see, it has all the gestures because it actually has quite a few more. And I think here reMarkable really puts in a lot of effort. By the way, it has a 3820 mAh battery. Compared to the 3000 mAh battery in the previous version, if the reMarkable 2 lasted 2 weeks, this one can last up to 3 weeks. This would even surpass the battery of the reMarkable Paper 3. In addition, it has 32 GB of internal memory, which is also better than the previous version. And you can work, for example, with Google Drive or Word or OneDrive, for instance, creating notes, documents, PDFs, etc. And by the way, I really love this feature. You can create a notes page that stays integrated between two pages, for example, in a PDF or an EPUB, and when writing, it feels very natural. There are 21 milliseconds of latency. However, at this point, the screen is the same as the previous version, 10.3 inches and 226 pixels per inch. Hopefully, in the next version, we'll finally see a jump to 300 pixels per inch. And another point to highlight is that everything you write by hand can be digitized, meaning it can be converted into text. It doesn't matter what language it is, as you can see. Additionally, you can edit the text. While it's not perfect, it improves and becomes more accurate with each update. All handwritten text. It doesn't matter if your handwriting is good or bad. And notice this detail. When you make a list, it automatically marks and crosses out items. And it's these details that make this company from Norway so different. Thank you. Hey, what happens if you pick another color, like using the highlighter to mark in green? On this monochrome screen, you'll just see it in black, white, and gray. But if you have the reMarkable app and the subscription, which I recommend, look at how it works right away, because honestly, it's almost instant. Whatever you've written, the modified text, the PDF, the quick note, whatever it is, shows up synced instantly. Practically on your phone, on the iPad, on the iPhone, on the computer, on the Mac. Compatibility is at its maximum at this point. And honestly, I really like this app for having synchronized work. And now, as promised, a promise is a promise. I'm going to compare it with the reMarkable Paper Pro, that is, the most expensive one from this Norwegian company. The design is also a bit different. You can see that the bottom tab is the one that sticks out, and above all, the panel is what stands out the most, apart from the case, which is metallic, and those pins show that it can be connected to a keyboard. The screen is based on Gallery 3, and it actually has much deeper colors than, for example, the Kaleido 3. But you can already see that once you turn off the LEDs on the reMarkable Paper Pro, the background of the screen, what should be white, looks a bit yellowish compared to the Paper Pure. But not only that, you can also see that when it comes to swiping, the Paper Pure is considerably faster, meaning the most affordable 10.3-inch tablet from the company reMarkable. And honestly, this is quite interesting. If color isn't important to you and if speed matters a bit more, pay attention to this Paper Pure. I've also liked that it's much lighter during the time I've used it. Having a plastic case does have its advantages. If LED lights aren't important to you and you're mostly going to use it in good lighting conditions, then I think you'll like this reMarkable Paper Pure. Now let's talk about the price. How much does this tablet with Norwegian tech cost? Well, you can see it right here. 399 euros, 469 if you want the case and you have it in green, pink, and blue. And without a doubt, what stands out most to me is the surprise I felt when I found the replacement for the famous reMarkable 2. Honestly, I was expecting a bit less, and even though I own the most expensive tablet from this company, there are things that this one does better, as you've seen in this video. Therefore, if you're mainly going to study, work, or read and you like to take notes or highlight and make annotations and have all your work and books synced online with honestly a pretty long battery life and above all, a screen that looks exceptional. Of course, it doesn't have LED lights, but I think it's an option you should consider, especially if, like me, you like these devices because you know you can spend hours reading without causing eye strain or getting a headache, thanks to the electronic ink technology itself. And now, it really helps me a lot if you share this video, that you subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a like so I can keep bringing devices that almost nobody else brings to YouTube with the best e-ink, whether it's color or monochrome. And keep an eye out for the next dual screen e-ink smartphone that I'll be bringing to this channel soon as well. And here's the thing, pay attention, it will be the first e-ink smartphone to surpass 80 frames per second. A milestone you'll see soon here on your channel Test-A-Do. And now you know. I'll leave you all the purchase links below in the video description, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and see you soon. Bye.